happy people, shiny happy people. Dun, 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 dun. So when people start talking about shiny happy people and asking me about it, I was like, ain't that an old REM song? Like I wasn't really into that style of music, but I was familiar with it. That's from the 90s. That's that sort of that grunge music from the 90s. And REM was one of them bands, the oh life is bigger than you, and you are not me. The things that I must go through. Right, they was hitting all that. That's me in the corner. Real real introspective / psychedelic kind of music. So I remember Shiny Happy People just being them, being a bunch of white people just dancing and jumping around. But I wasn't into that music enough to know what it meant. So I didn't realize that there was a real thing going on. But then I found out, whoa, there's a documentary called Shiny Happy People that is talking about this other family whose show I never watched. The Duggars had it was a Christian kind of fundamentalist family with 17 kids or 18 or something. It was like 18 and counting. I remember some of this stuff, right? So as I started hearing people talking about this documentary and how they were affected by it and different things I was saying, I just had two thoughts I just wanted to share with you. You know what I'm saying? All right, so I'm Kirk Kennedy, man. Welcome to CNN. Let's go in, all right? Shiny Happy People documentary is a documentary about a family called the Duggars that I believe were once on TLC. It was called 19 Kids and Counting. So I want to make two thoughts about this documentary, because this documentary, if you are a person of the Christian tradition, as I am, this documentary is going to affect you. It's going to affect you. And let me explain why. First, this documentary, I think it's 4 episodes. It's been relatively crazy. And it basically reveals the behind the scenes of what was happening with the family when they were filming the TLC documentary, 19 Kids and Counting. Now, I'm a sucker for those Where Are They Now videos, like the bands or different things, people that you used to listen to or like, and then you realize you haven't seen them in decades, and then you watch them about them. So those behind the scenes are always good. But let me tell you 2 things that are going to turn shiny, happy people into people's accusations against you. So this documentary, if you're of the Christian tradition, is going to affect you in 2 ways, all right? Here's the first way. The deconstruction of Christianity is must-see TV. Like when you think about the Hillsong documentaries, and American Gospel was good. That was good, but like Hillsong has a couple different documentaries. Now this one, deconstruction of Christianity is must-see TV, man. People are lathered up about watching people who profess to be Christians sin get exposed, right? This is must-see TV. Let me read you a brief article. Listen to the stat. This is from Variety magazine. And listen to what they say about the show, Shiny Happy People. Listen to what they say. All right, stay with me. Here's the title of the article on Variety magazine. It says this: as Shiny Happy People achieves Prime Video's biggest docu-series debut ever, Amazon TV chief Vernon Sanders talks strategy. All right. So this is the Amazon TV chief explains the strategy behind this docu-series, which is the biggest debut ever. All right, here's what it says. Shiny Happy People, Duggar Family Secrets, so that's the title of it, has had the biggest debut of any documentary series ever produced by Amazon Studios, Variety has learned. All right? The limited series investigates controversies surrounding the Duggar family, best known for TLC's 19 Kids and Counting, including Josh Duggar's conviction for possession of child pornography. You're supposed to say that now. If you say the other word, you get in trouble. And the family's connection to the Institute in Basic Life Principles, all right? It says, after premiering on Amazon Prime Video for all 4 episodes on June 2nd, Shiny Happy People reached more viewers in its first 9 days than any Amazon docu-series. All right, including the high-profile titles like Lula Rich, the 2021 documentary that examined Lula Rose Pyramid Scheme. Additionally, so again, it goes into explaining that this documentary, titled, this is what it's titled, Shiny Happy People, Duggar Family Secrets, right? Whenever you hear secrets, we just gravitate towards that, right? This is why Inquiring Minds, this old gossip magazine from like the 80s and 90s, used to grab people, because whenever people have been drawn to special knowledge since biblical times. I mean, the Gospel of John was written to go against Gnosticism, this special revelation. And Paul talked about it in Colossians 2. This revelation of God that you can. So it's always, people always want to have this deeper knowledge of revelation. They want to be in the know, so to speak, right? So when you title a show like Family Secrets, you're going to pique people's curiosity. So they say highest docu-series ever, right? But it's connected to Christianity, right? Christianity. So these family are professing believers, 19 kids and counting. And one of their sons apparently did some things to his sister, assaulted his sister in ways, and got arrested for it. On the show, they talked about him not telling his wife until after he got married, right? So they talk about, so all this stuff is going on. But this show is largely, let's uncover the dark secrets of Christianity, right? Sort of a Christian family and their sinfulness is basically what it is. Let's highlight. And let's be clear. Anyone in general, but any professing believer will have things that we do that contradict what we believe. And if they were on camera, the world would see, and maybe not to the degree of this family, but it is what it is, right? It's just the reality. We're not perfect in this life. It's why we trust Jesus' perfection, because we know that we'll never attain it. But this documentary series is one of many, and I've watched more of these develop over the last couple years with Hillsong, and then another Hillsong one, then another Hillsong one, and then this one. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody's working on a Ravi Zacharias documentary, a Southern Baptist SBC documentary. Remember last year they were in the news largely because of their sexual sin and the downplaying of that. They're trying to hide it to some degree among certain people within the upper organization. This is must-see TV. This is, people who love to see just anything like this, but when it connects to someone being a Christian, man, do they want to see that. They want to see that. So you have to understand, this must-see TV that's negative about, because this is the thing. I know people who don't even separate Catholic and Protestant. They just think, oh, y'all just be touching kids. It's like, fam, that's not, well, one, I ain't do that. But two, you talking about the Catholic Church as an institution, but then obviously evangelicals do it too. But people do not disconnect. They don't have categories, particularly when you're Christian. They don't have categories. You know how like in the Muslim world, they'll be like, oh, those were Shiite Muslims and those were Sunni Muslims and they don't talk like that about it. They throw us all in the same rap, right? So if Kanye West says something wild, we all agree with that. If Westboro Baptist Church shows up, we all agree with that. If Duck Dynasty says something, we all agree. They just throw everybody in the same boat, right? So when they watch these documentaries, and don't get me wrong, I mean, you can put them out there if they want. These people sin, if the Lord decides to expose people's sin, so be it. But these documentaries, in many ways, do impact you and I. Not our faith per se, but the way people perceive it. What it does is it makes it difficult for us. For those of us that still believe we should go make disciples of people, this makes it difficult because people see this and think, aha, this is who you guys are. This is who you are. Now, the second point I want to make is connected to this first point, and I want to give you a case in point. Even in the midst of all of that, there is an inconsistency with deconstruction, all right? So I'm going to give you an example from this actual show. I was recently talking to some people, and I've heard this a few times over the last 2 weeks or something since this documentary's come out, 2-3 weeks. And I heard this. I heard someone say to me recently, Hey man, I was talking to someone who watched that documentary, Shiny Happy People, and they were like, see, this is why I'm not a Christian. This is why I'm not, because they've been deconstructing their faith for a while. And this was like almost not a nail in the coffin, but it almost was like justification. See, this is why I'm not a Christian. I've heard this from multiple different angles. I want to talk about that because I think this is the problem of what I'm saying, where these documentaries present a side of Christianity that's predominantly negative, and anyone who agrees with Christianity, like you or I, those of you who do, is like, something's wrong with us because have you seen that documentary? It's like, that documentary doesn't define everybody. That ain't happening. Ain't no shiny, happy people at my church. We just regular old folks trying to honor the Lord. Right? But anyway, as you hear this talk, well, that's why I'm not a Christian because of that. You're going to hear this a lot if you haven't already. It's important to examine that statement, right? There's an inconsistency to deconstruction. One, if you're not a Christian because of Hillsong and what they did, how could they do, or the Duggars and if you're not a Christian because of them, here's what you're saying. My faith was not in the finished work of Jesus Christ. My faith was connected to other people's obedience to Jesus, right? You will not find a credible translation that says that. Now, obviously, we're in community. We bear one another's burdens. There are things that the Bible expects us to do. The phrase one another is used like 90-something times in the New Testament. In fact, at our church, we have our gatherings. We call them one another meetings because we're trying to live life with one another, right? But if you say that that's the reason why you're not a Christian, then what you're saying is that my eternal faith was placed in temporal man. My faith was placed in other people's believing. And you see this all the time. You hear about this all the time. Pastor commits adultery. The church falls apart. People, I no longer believe anymore. When Ravi Zacharias came out, oh my gosh, I so trust him. I don't believe anymore, right? There's this sense where if other people fail in their faith, I'm denying mine. What are we really saying when we say that? Like, this is what I believe to be true, and I could be wrong, but this is what I believe to be true right now of myself. If everyone said, I'm no longer going to be a Christian, then I'm the last one standing. Like, I've been in the world and come out of it. I have no desire to return back to a hopeless dynamic where I'd rather trust my faith with the universe or whatever that is, right? It's just not reality. Now, there's a peer pressure if everyone says they don't believe, but the reality is your faith is not connected to your friend's faith. In fact, Matthew 10, Jesus said, look, I didn't come to bring peace, but a sword. I came to cause division between a mother and a father, a mother and a daughter, a father and a son. In other words, there are going to be people, even in the most intimate, interpersonal relationships that people have, there are going to be some that believe in me and some that don't, and it's going to cause division, right? Our faith is not connected to the faithfulness of other people. And let me tell you why this is important, because when we're in interpersonal relationships like marriage or siblings or coworkers, and they're all Christian, especially marriage, this is really big in marriage. And you tend to think, well, I'm not going to obey God and honor God if they don't. So let's just say there's a season of a pattern of bitterness or struggle in your marriage or some relationship between you and your parents, and they're all Christian. You will not humble yourself and put on the fruits of the Spirit that God commands unless they do. It's like, well, I'm sorry, I'm not going to let them walk all over me. And it's like, well, Jesus let them punch him in the face and let them put a crown of thorns on him and spit on. So it was okay for Jesus to do that? It was okay for Jesus to let them rip open his back and whip him 39 times with bone, stone, and glass at the end of that whip so that it ripped off his skin, and it was okay for him? Like, no, the thing is, it's like we were like, listen, if they don't obey the Lord, it's like I'm entitled to not obey the Lord if my spouse doesn't. And that's not true at all. So in many ways, our faith is largely connected to other people's. But when you're willing to forego your faith, right, and say, I don't believe at all, and I don't believe in Jesus anymore because these people didn't obey him to my satisfaction, whew, that's crazy, right? So again, so when 1 John 2 says, well, if they went out from us, they were never with us in the first place, it makes a lot more sense. Listen, I tell my church all the time, the Lord doesn't need me to lead this church. He doesn't need me. And God forbid that I disqualify myself by some character. But if I do, People can be affected because they trusted me and loved me. But man, don't ever walk away from the Lord because someone that you loved and respected didn't persevere in their faith, right? It just doesn't work. All right. Second reason why this is inconsistent, and this is the one I think is the most odd to me. So when you say, or someone says, I don't believe in Christ. This is why I'm not a Christian anymore because of that. Look at and you watch the Duggar doc, and that's justification for you. You see the sins of them, and you say, I totally am deconstructing. I have no more. If people sin like that, what they did, then I no longer believe in Christianity. Here's the problem with that logic. You do not apply that in any other situation for the most part. You do not. Why do you apply it at Christianity but not in anything else? Let me explain what I mean. Let's say you go to a restaurant and your food is just terrible. The service is terrible. You ordered the food, you didn't like it, the waiter had an attitude, it was terrible. Who have you ever heard say, you know what? I had a bad experience at a restaurant. I no longer believe in the food service industry. I am deconstructing going to restaurants and food service industry. I no longer do that. Who does that, right? No one does that. You may say, I'm not going back to that restaurant. I'm never ordering that food again. But it's a rare occasion that someone is wild enough to be like, well, since I got offended at this restaurant, they didn't do a good job. I no longer believe in the food service industry, right? It's just unrealistic. Your car breaks down. You take your car to a mechanic and they don't fix it. Do you now say, well, I am deconstructing the automobile industry? I am no longer agree with driving cars, nor will I ever drive a car again. I no longer believe in it because this mechanic did not do what he was supposed to do, and this mechanic didn't. It may sound silly, but this is essentially what people are saying. I no longer believe in Jesus because people who said they believe in him sinned. They never say, well, I don't believe in him because my sin. I sin too much. Maybe they do. But you don't deconstruct anything else because there are problems in it. You don't deconstruct I went to the hospital and had a bad case, so I no longer believe. Maybe some people do that, but yeah, until you get some chest pains, then you'll be right back at hey, let me in, I'm sorry. Didn't you make a video that you said, let me in? You don't do it. There's an inconsistency in deconstruction. So why do you do that when it comes to Christianity, but you don't do that? Okay, when you see, so do you deconstruct parenting? Do you say, hey, because these people treated their kids harshly or terribly, I no longer believe in the institution of parenting? It's just unrealistic, right? So why do you do that when it comes to Christianity? And this is what happens. There's a logical inconsistency of deconstruction because many people who deconstruct their faith don't deconstruct anything else. You might not put yourself in a certain situation, but you're not going to deconstruct the whole industry of the whole medical care industry, the whole food industry, the whole travel industry because you went on someplace and didn't like how. That's unrealistic. And so that's where you know that there is a real challenge to what's happening. It's really spiritual. This is really not just an awakening that people are having. This is very targeted by the enemy. And what it's meant to do for those of us who still are from the Christian tradition, we're supposed to be like upset, offended, and somehow questioning our own faith. Fam, listen. I don't know who you are and what's happened in your life. I have no idea. But if your relationship with Jesus is tied to the way other people obey him, then your relationship with Jesus is not genuine. You believe in him because of what he did for you. And if everyone else says, I don't believe, you should have enough faith for what he did for you to be like, man, I'm sorry I don't, but I ain't turning back. And especially if you're like someone like me who did not grow up in the church and that's all you know. I understand that that's a different challenge for people who don't know the other side of it. But when you grow up in the church like me and you know what it's like to be in the world, Oh, Slim, ain't going. I was facing 43 years in prison for a shootout that I did. I should have got 25 years in 1998, which would have had me out this year. Do you know how different my life has been the last 25 years because of the Lord? I'd have been a grown man hoping that if my mother was still alive because of dealing with all the heartache of her son being in prison, if she was, I would have come out, been living with my mom and hoping that maybe she could help me with some connections, get a job. The last 25 years of my life, with all the different struggles I had, are way better than the previous years of living in the world, right? So I understand what it means. So I ain't going back. Now, I don't know what your life is like, but I'm telling you, you have to make sure. When Peter says in 1 Peter 1:10, make your calling and election sure, let me give you one interpretation of that. Make sure your calling and election isn't contingent upon other people's, because people will fail you. You will sin against people. You don't deconstruct yourself. You know what I'm saying? You're not thinking like, you know what? I sinned against someone, so I'm no longer going to ever talk or do anything. It's unrealistic. Our faith is not in the community of people that believe, right? Our faith is in the reality of who Christ is. And we share that with community. But if I'm never a part of, if everyone walks away, I'm still going to believe. That's what it has to take. That's what it means. So I'm saying all this to say, look, there's logical inconsistencies to deconstruction. And these shows, the deconstruction of our faith is like must-see TV. But don't let it, it's not must-see for you to reflect and question if what you believe is true. No way. Not at all. What you believe is solid. Just because other people didn't believe it, listen, I will read a Ravi Zacharias book if the information is helpful. I could care less. I'm not going to not read. Truth is truth, whether people live it out or not. If I fail my church and I have to step down, it does not mean everything I taught was untrue. And lastly, let me prove this to you. Open your Bibles if you get a chance. I don't have this pulled up. This is coming to my mind, but Matthew 23. I'm going to read. Listen to what Jesus says in Matthew 23. This is crazy to me. You may have even heard me say this before. But listen to what Jesus says in Matthew 23. Listen to this. Here's what he says. It says, then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, listen to what he says. The scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat, right? So do and observe whatever they tell you, but not the works they do. For they preach, but do not practice. They tie up heavy burdens hard to bear and lay them on people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to move them with their fingers. So here's what Jesus is saying. The Pharisees and the scribes, they sit on Moses' seat. In other words, they have they understand the Mosaic law, and they can still benefit you. You can still benefit from hearing from them. They sit on Moses' seat. So listen to what they say, but don't imitate their lifestyles. Listen to what Jesus is saying. He didn't say, don't listen to anyone that's not one of my disciples that doesn't come in my name. Jesus is saying, these people who are disqualified from eternity, right? These Pharisees, they have the knowledge of the Mosaic law, so God is still going to use their knowledge to instruct you. So listen to what they say, but don't imitate them because they're hypocrites. They don't do what they say. Now, I could be wrong. I don't know of any people described like that are going to make it in eternity. So what Jesus is saying is God is going to use these people, even though they're not qualified for eternity, to train you so that you are qualified for eternity. Sheesh. So if you're a teacher, it's like, hey, listen, so I can read a book. Even if this dude didn't believe it, what he said was still true. It's still true. You got to pay attention. It's a lot going on. The enemy's at work. Don't fall for it. Don't let all this stuff. Watch the documentaries, cool, but watch them to show what not to do, and watch them so that people, you know how to talk through people when they bring up, well, look at this. But listen, there's no one on earth that deconstructs every time someone else does something wrong. It's unrealistic. You couldn't live in this world. So people deconstructing their faith, it may sound legitimate. Look at what they did. But they don't deconstruct anything else that they have a bad experience with. But what do I know? Nothing. I'm Kirk Kennedy. I'm back, y'all. Sorry for the loss. Boom. Grace and peace.